Congratulations to episode number 33 of Ice Cave Radio. Flake here. Look, Flake here, Charmer here. Doa's still traveling. We miss you so dearly because
Doa is still waiting for the rounds to pair. No, I'm not. Never mind. I'm not going to say it. We're not going to be mean to other people's experiences, but
this is the fourth podcast I think that I record in like the span of 2 or 3 days. And then I go to tomorrow is like editing, publishing, all that stuff. It's been a busy kind of thing, so I'm kind of like my whole head is spinning when it comes to recording stuff, and that's okay because I love this and I choose to do this. I love it with all my heart, and it is Ice Cave Radio. I almost said the W word. It's Ice Cave Radio. Flake here to bring you all of the Star Wars Unlimited news, headlines, decks, spoilers, discussion about not just Star Wars Unlimited, but also all Star Wars card games, because that's what we do. And I'm joined by one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Darick Oswalt, a.k.a. Charmer.
I was going to say, I thought you said Doa was gone this week. Lead in like one of my best friends in the whole wide world. I know that's not me. But
it is you. It is definitely you. But welcome, friends.
I love you too, buddy. Listen, we have a great episode, I think, because we can finally talk about the thing. I know we've been teasing fun stuff was coming, but today, so we're recording this as of January 31st. It is 8:42 p.m. Eastern time where I'm at, and the news is finally out, and that is, of course, the Star Wars Unlimited Community Celebrational. So we're going to dive into that as our main topic, but before we do that, we're, of course, going to cover card reveals, and before that, we're going to do our Cave Pull of the Week.
The Cave Pull of this week, Charmer, is a different flavor than what I'm used to putting out there. I didn't consult you. I didn't consult Doa. I just fired it off. And I think that it was a good one. It was, my friends, very simple as I scroll down to find it. Where the hell did it go?
Mace Windu survive his confrontation with Palpatine. And I actually adore this poll. This is right up my alley.
Perfect. Perfect. And I wanted to, this is very simple. It's yes or it's no. And frankly, part of this was because we got a question last week, which was, hey, is he a land unit? Is he a this unit? Is he alive? Is he a leader? What's going on? Where's he at? And I was trying to frame it, Charmer, from a perspective of, okay, is he alive? But alive in what time frame? Because, we don't know where we're at in the time frame. It bounces forward, it bounces backwards in terms of canonically. My initial draft of this was, is Mace Windu alive when A New Hope begins? And then I just changed it to, did he survive the encounter with Sidious / Palpatine? And I think that was the fairer one to do. And I will say this. I am surprised at the results, but I want to hear what your answer was first.
My answer was a hard yes, because it's my favorite fan theory, I think, in all of Star Wars, because I think that it would be such a cool story to tell. We talked about this, a bit, I think, even on last week's podcast. So I'm a hard yes. I've been thinking about it even more since the last time we talked about it. Now, I will fully admit, I have not consumed every piece of Star Wars content that there is to consume. I have not read every book. I have not read all of the comics. Actually, comics might be my weakest point, but I have read some of them, et cetera, et cetera. But I had this thought. I was like, man, of all the stuff that I have seen, the one thing that jumps out to me as I think about this whole, did Mace survive thing or not, is that we've never seen him as a Force ghost.
That's a very good point.
Obviously, we've seen Obi-Wan, we've seen Yoda, and then Luke in the 7, 8, 9 movies.
Qui-Gon.
We've seen Qui-Gon, right? Anakin, but I haven't seen Mace Windu. Now you could argue, okay, well, he didn't learn it or whatever, but Qui-Gon was obviously working with Mace, and Qui-Gon's the one who developed it and supposedly handed it off. So
you make him sound like Puff Daddy. Well, he was working with Mace, and they had the family.
They had a collab. He was featured on the Qui-Gon album, if you will. So all I'm saying is, that one, I think it's a great story, but also the more I think about it, we didn't see a body. He's one of the most powerful Jedi. If Darth Maul can be cut in half and come back, why not Mace? But also, I've never seen a Force ghost. And so that has been nagging at me for a bit. I could be wrong. It might be some obscure thing. If you have seen it in a piece of Star Wars literature or whatever, then tweet it at me, send it to me. But I'm going with yes, he survived.
If it exists, I have not seen it. You're correct. However, they have just launched a Marvel comic series, a Mace Windu one, where I last week predicted that it would end with you finding out that he survived. I believe he did, and for the same reason that Obi-Wan Kenobi can ride the Krell or whatever that golden retriever lizard thing is, get blasted by artillery fire, fall God knows how much, and then still survive. I think that Mace Windu, a significantly more powerful Jedi, can also survive. The amount of high altitudes that Jedi fall from and survive because they just cushion their fall or slow their fall with the Force as they land, it's obvious that if he just jumped out of that window, he would have survived. Unless he gets nailed by a passing car, flying car, or whatever. I believe that Sidious did not kill him. I do not believe that. I believe he's alive at the end of Rise of Skywalker, and like we discussed last week, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty. If you want to hear that whole discussion, go back to last week's episode. But he laid low in the same vein that Obi-Wan laid low, that Yoda laid low, which was, like, we're going to hide. We're going to chill out. Same thing with Luke. Luke laid low and hid and whatever. And that's fine. Yeah. And I think that that's the case. What are the results, though? Because I cannot find for the life of me the actual poll now.
Yeah, I gotcha. So in the yes category, we had 54.9% of the vote. No was 45.1%. So this was actually very close. And I will be honest, I'm surprised the yeses won, because normally when I mention this, people tell me I'm crazy. So I'm glad that, you know, slightly more than half of you out there are conceding to my madness.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it was this. Not just that it won, but it was. Well, I mean, surprised that it won, but like I thought it was going to be like a 20-80 split here. I generally do, and part of that would have been people just suspecting that he just died, and the other saying, "I kind of hope he did," and I think he lived, but I hope he died. Does that make sense? And that's a very awful thing to say, but it is what it is. But at the same time, when you use your, again, suspend all disbelief, it's fantasy, it's science fiction, etc. Given the who he is and what he's capable of, it doesn't make sense that he died there.
I'll say this. I am fine if he is actually dead, because I think that, again, giving somebody some sort of like final moment is important. I also think that it in many ways, it also solidifies the rise of Palpatine by knocking off somebody like a Mace Windu. So like, I'm fine if he's truly dead. But, you're right. You're talking about suspension of disbelief and all of that. But in my head, I'm like, it's actually harder for me to believe he's dead than it is alive, because all the evidence laid out kind of supports him being alive somewhere.
That's right. And the extra evidence you talk about, a Force ghost and this and that. And I get it. Like, Yoda learned how to communicate, through death, and taught it to Qui-Gon and all this other nonsense. I say nonsense, but you're right. And let's be real. When it comes to being a badass, just survivability style Jedi, he was possibly the GOAT. Mace Windu was the ultimate Jedi warrior. Like, he was pretty much unbeatable in combat. He proved it. He whooped ass. And my suspicion is that through his training and through his ascension to Jedi Master and sitting and almost running the council practically, that he was probably tossed out of some freaking windows along the way, and it's no big deal. I guarantee you it's no big deal. So I'm going to say that, yes, he's alive, to my own dismay, but it makes sense that he's alive. But what has he done in that case? I would love to see a side arc where he's in hiding and he gets killed in some other way, and that's perfectly fine.
I know I talked about it last week, and I talked about that fun arc that's the trope that's based on the historical Japanese soldier that kept fighting World War II for decades after. So I love that. But in this moment, I just realized there's another way I kind of would love to see him come back, just because when I think about Sam Jackson and his portrayal of Mace Windu, this is what I want, right? Whether it's in Ahsoka, a future movie, or whatever, right? There's a new big bad. It's the new Vader. There's always got to be something. It was Vader. It was Kylo, right? It's the new, like, dark, cloaked, masked figure. And then after a fight, he gets the Vader treatment. Half the mask comes off, and it's Mace. He got thrown out the window. He was so angry and so consumed by his rage for missing that Palpatine was right under his nose, for losing a battle because he just doesn't do it, that's why he went into hiding, because he went to the dark side too. It starts from a place of good, right? He's like, I'm going to have to be more powerful to take down Palpatine. And then he just goes dark. And when he comes back, it's as the villain. And that's the big reveal. I will also accept that as an arc.
Okay. And I like that arc. The only flaw here is, and like, if it was something of another Jedi, like Obi-Wan or whatever, where you're like, you're right. He gets the reality. Oh my God, I can't believe that this was happening under my nose. I can't believe that I lost Anakin to the dark side. I can't believe I lost a fight that I should have won. And there's rage that builds up. There's, embarrassment. There's jealousy. There's all this stuff. So he hides in order to prevent himself from being a nuisance. Maybe he just chucks himself to another dimension or another galaxy, as we have now seen is capable with these space whales. But ultimately, the flaw in that is that part of his prowess with a lightsaber is using a style of lightsaber combat that kind of taps into that anger and rage and channels a little bit of the dark side. So I don't think that he would be too afraid of dark side-esque type of feelings and influences, given the fact that part of his prowess with the lightsaber is
right.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he's afraid of the dark side. I think he's afraid of being bested. And so he taps into it further. So I think that's actually the window for that arc, right? Because his thing, he's like, okay, like it didn't work out. We have to go deeper, right? Like we have to tap that dangerous battery a little bit more next time. And then it starts to consume him.
Well,
and also, like, I'll be honest, I just want to see Sam Jackson show up and be the villain, because I think that would just be so charismatic on the other end of the spectrum. He steals the show.
Plus, frankly, if anybody's gonna be able to sell the line tap that, it's definitely Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
All right, so there are your results, ladies and gentlemen, for the cave poll of the week. Cave poll is available every Sunday. We hope. We try our best. It's usually Monday, but check out us on Sundays anyways, at Ice Cave Radio on Twitter. You guys can go ahead and contribute to the poll. Let's get to the headlines, and there were some pretty significant ones, Charmer, that all center around basically a stream that occurred today being January 31st when we record this. It's a shade before 9 p.m. Eastern time, so keep that in mind. But this stream was such that they kind of broke down what the pre-release situation was going to be, and then we dug into a lot of the tentacles that kind of are brought forth from pre-release events and all that stuff. And there was some really cool tidbits here, but I do want to talk quickly about the pre-release, the events, and all that stuff, which are taking place, I think, the first weekend of March.
Yes. March 1st, I think, is what they said on the stream. And that makes sense. That's the Friday before release. So depending on your local store, they might run stuff on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I would imagine they give them the whole window. But, March 1st is going to be our, drop day, if you will. And I'm really looking forward to it. And that is, again, it's January 31st. So that is a month from tomorrow.
A month from tomorrow.
I can't wait, man.
It's crazy. We're already there. I'm exceptionally excited because, and look, I just came off of a Lorcana podcast, of all things, where we talked about Star Wars Unlimited. Not because I brought it up, because they brought it up through their own excitement. This is a game that at its fundamental levels, people are hyped about. And when you say hype and you say Lorcana, those kind of go hand in hand. But people are kind of coming off of it and realizing that at the end of the day, this is probably a superior game. And again, I'm just everybody's allowed to like what they want, and this is not me taking shots at other games. This is me merely saying that a lot of people are seeing both and preferring this, and that's okay. The hype is definitely there. One thing about the stream that concerned me, and I wouldn't be a responsible, dare I say, journalist, which I'm not, if I didn't mention, I know, if I did not mention that one of the concerns being the curling of the leader foils from the pre-release packs. This is something that we've played card games and paper card games forever. One of the things about foils is that nobody wants them anymore because they are unplayable. And when I say unplayable, it's that you can be disqualified from tournaments for having curled cards. You have to go through deck checks and have cards either replaced or proxied. This is a true thing. I've been at tournaments. I've casted tournaments in Flesh and Blood where there has been plenty of hubbub about this kind of stuff. It sucks, but that's how it goes. Now, that said, these are leader cards. They exist on the board as it is. There's no advantage you get from knowing where that card is because you know where it starts. Not to mention the cards that came out of the packs from the pre-release look nice and clean. So I just wanted to throw it out there that that's something that we want to keep an eye on, because I have seen Magic get tossed through the ringer because their foils were absolute, just complete ass. Flesh and Blood had some bad printings of some curling foils that were very unfortunate. And then I look back, Charmer, at Star Wars CCG foils, and I still have some that have just been sitting out, and they are flat as a pancake, baby. Where did that technology go?
I don't know. You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I made it to my LGS this week, actually, for an armory. And I was shocked to find out that not only was I at an armory, but they were sorting bulk. They had like a bunch of boxes, and it was all Star Wars CCG Decipher, baby. I was like, oh man, what do you got there?
Did you go through it? Tell me you went through it.
They were still doing their sorting, but I immediately said, hey, look, if you are like sorting this to sell or get rid of it or whatever, like you let me know. I know several people that are absolutely interested. And he was like, well, I don't know if anything's playable. I was like, I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
You don't understand. Like, I know a guy who sends them out with Christmas cards every year. It will find a home of somebody who loves it. So I will keep you posted. But I was very excited about that. And you are correct. Those cards hold up. I don't know what was in the technology back then, but
it's incredible.
They kind of stand the test of time. I will say, one, I think your concerns are very well founded, right? Obviously, for competitive play, the curling of foils is potentially problematic. We have seen it in other games. You have to assume it would impact this game as well because of the marked card issue, as you said. I am reserving the right to continue to be optimistic on this point for a couple of reasons, though. So obviously, this was a pre-release kit. I don't know if this was part of the wave that was printed for all pre-release kits, or if this is something that they've had in-house for some time, right? So this could have been something that's been sitting around that studio for forever. Who knows how it was kept or cared for it or blah, blah, blah. Also, the major curling was on leader cards, and while that still sucks, especially if you're the person who owns it, those aren't going to be marked cards. You don't shuffle those in. It's more of a concern when it's cards that are being shuffled in. So not that that is any excuse for card quality. I'm just saying, like, it's not as bad if we see it on leader cards, but the other stuff is crisp like we saw in the packs, because the foils that they put on the stream from the packs did look fine. Now, there's also the old test of time, right? Maybe they're fine coming out of the pack, and then, they curl after the fact. Now, if you're listening and you don't understand why this even happens, most of the cards that are printed in foil have like a layer of the foiling in them, in just the way that the card is created. Like, it's part of the entire thing, and it's almost kind of got like a plastic consistency, and it's done at a certain like temperature and humidity. And so when you get your cards and they are released to the open air over time, if where you live is of a drastic temperature and humidity difference, they will curl as a result. And they will also like curl in different directions. Like you can see photos online from, other games and other cards where somebody will be like, I live, in the northern hemisphere and my card curls like this. And it's almost like a joke, right? It's like, oh, my toilet flushes backwards in, south. But it's the same thing, right? And then you'll have some people who are like, mine never curl, but they might be at the exact temperature and humidity of wherever the cards are printed from. So I think it's impossible to have cards that don't do it a little bit unless you're doing a different kind of foiling. So there's like stamp foiling and cold foiling and all sorts of stuff, and who knows what they'll do for future sets. But I'm choosing to be optimistic because this was a small sample size and we got mixed results, right? The pack stuff looked good. It was just the promos here. So, but yes, agree. That is a concern. It's a valid concern, especially when you talk about competitive integrity.
Exactly. And it would be silly of me not to address the fact that, not everything is always rose-colored glasses, that certain things can potentially have, some flaws to them. And that was a concern of mine because as somebody who is not a foil or vanity collector, this is a game that I think I might want to be. That I might want to collect the hyperspaces and the foil variants of things, and if that's the case, that's something that we got to see. But yeah, and I understand, and I hope that everyone out there understands as well that it has to do with the climate and the environment, and that's where it goes. The best thing to do is just double sleeve them, put them in a deck box, make sure they're nice and tight. Never an issue. Beyond that, there was the discussion of these like store championships and the prizes involved. And this is one thing that I think is pretty badass because they showed the Mace Windu, which I'll put on screen for everybody to see, your like store champion card, which is so cool to see. Anything that has this uniqueness, this embossed kind of extra foiling to say, hey, this is earned. This isn't pulled. That is something very cool because earned cards typically become more coveted and more valuable. And what's interesting for me, Charmer, is beyond the fact that there's a store championship, there's a finalist. So if you finish second, there's a top 4 and a top 8. And if you win, you get all of them. So you collect the whole sweep. And that's pretty damn cool. And I think that this is extra enticement. And I literally had this discussion about Lorcana on the podcast I recorded, which is a Quest for 20 podcast. I highly recommend you go check it out. We talked about what brings people in, and I said it's not about stickers and stuff. I'm like, as soon as there's a game with winners and losers, people are going to want to find out how they can be better and how they can win and how they can compete. But they also want something to compete for. And these store championship promos, dude, I don't think there's going to be a week or a month where I'm going to be like, I can pass on this. I want to go and at least score myself a top 8er of whatever that particular card is. Not to mention, hey, if I'm the finalist, I get top 8, top 4, and finalist, I get my playset. But if I'm going to be a finalist, I might as well win the whole damn thing, right?
So here's the fun part. One, I think that obviously everybody's going to want the champion one because that's going to be the most coveted. But for me personally, the ones that I put in my decks, I only want to put in ones I've earned just because then, I don't know, it feels more authentic to me. So I do think that's really cool. With one exception, I will, likely because they're also going to be cheaper than, say, the champion ones, but I will chase down play sets of every finalist version of every card so that when you and I get to teach Tannen the game, I will hand him the second place deck. It's only finalist, never champion, because he's captain coming second. I will do that as a bit just to see the look on his face.
That's pretty good. I am all about that. I think that I will help you on that journey. I like what you mentioned about I will only play the cards I've earned, and I had this discussion actually about Flesh and Blood related prizes and cards. For example, selling a gold foil card, but even beyond that, like when a player wins a Pro Tour, they get a special version of the hero they won with Pro Tour champion, whatever city, just foiled onto it. It's a 1 of 1. And those cards I have seen pre-sold for more than you think that they sold for. Like, I'm talking $30,000 or $40,000. like deals cut before matches are played to be like, if you win it, I'm buying it for this. Agree? Perfect. Awesome. I have no problem selling a card that I earn because you cannot take away the fact that I earned that card. I don't care who has it in their possession, but when it comes down to it, I won it, baby. And when people look back on who won that card, it's my name. So I'll take the money and the glory. You can have the trophy. That's kind of where I'm at with this kind of stuff. Not that I don't think that these championship cards are going to go for a lot unless it's a very playable card. I think that in that case, you like people will want the championship versions and they might be significant. Who knows? I've also seen participation prizes from One Piece tournaments turn around and sell for $200. Like it's obscene what people will pay for. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. And then
You know what else there is though, and these are something that I will never earn, but I will absolutely buy.
Oh, these are so beautiful. I'm glad that you brought these up because these are probably going to be even more coveted, the judge promos. So they're going to talk about, they mentioned that they will release judging schools and judge programs, etc. out there, which is super important because that's something that Lorcana also doesn't have. But friends, if you do it, if you are part of the judge program and you judge an event, you will get, as part of your compensation, a very unique card, and it's very often playable, and it is usually the rarest variant of whatever card that will be. And the one that they showed us, I believe, was Takedown.
Yes.
And it is the hyperspace, foil embossed judge.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it's not even hyperspace because hyperspace has like the streaky lines. And then for anything that is event based, it's like a blur or like a vignette almost, right? Like it fades. So it's actually not quite the same. And I do like that there is a distinction because hyperspace is anything that comes out of packs. And then these, both the Mace Windu, the Takedown card, and in the past, they've also, I think, showed off a couple of other of the event-based stuff as well. But these have like a softer edge, but I still think it looks outstanding. And then obviously you have the like judge stamping as well.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, Mace Windu is a legendary. Like,
yeah,
you score yourself a legendary card in the rarest format, in the rarest form that I've seen so far. So I will say this about these announcements. Everybody was concerned about this game and the longevity and the investment that FFG was going to put into it. And as somebody who hasn't really played many FFG games, if not any, frankly, I was very concerned that this might be what everyone else was kind of worried about, which was, a 2 or 3 year endeavor and then kind of put away. Everything that I have seen here has been to entice, invest, and support a competitive scene, a community, and to reward people for exploring and committing to the game. Their commitment is put forth through things like this. And this really instills a lot more confidence in me. The fact that they're like, hey, we don't have to do this because you're probably going to buy the game anyways, but we're doing it anyways because we trust that we want to show you that we care as much as you care right now. And that is important to a game. And I know that this is a Star Wars Unlimited podcast, but I have been critical of certain elements of Star Wars Unlimited in the past, as I have been critical of every other game that I've had a podcast about. Honesty is something that I've very much tried to embody. Integrity, honesty, etc. I am very excited about this because of every little thing that they have shown us that shows that they give a crap about the player base, the rules. It's not just a reskin of another game. It's a lot of great elements of existing rule sets that coalesce into what this is, which is amazing. And I don't want to gush too much about it, but these judge promos, the championship things, these aren't championship cards being printed of commons. These are legendary cards that you can win by going to your weekly event, your FNM, your armory, your whatever. I'm so freaking just like gung-ho about this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I'm extra excited. I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of speechless because I'm very excited and I am dying. All right. Ooh, take a deep breath. I am almost overwhelmed every time I think about the fact that the game is about to come out, because we've been covering it for so long. Like, basically since they came public with the announcement, we've been doing this podcast. It's going to feel weird actually doing this when we can play the game for the first time. And we've got official launch on March 8th, pre-releases March 1st, and more fun on February 10th. But I think before we dive into that part, we should probably talk about the 6 cards that were revealed. And then we'll talk about the community event as well, that we are so excited that we can actually finally share with you all. But since the last time we recorded, there has been 6 more cards spoiled from set 1, Spark of the Rebellion. And I'll just lead us off, starting with Baze Malbus. This is a 4-cost ground unit. Vigilance, so just solo Vigilance. Big fan of this card. Has a 2/5 stat line, also has Grit. And then I love this. It has Sentinel while you have Initiative. So there's been some other cards that care about Initiative that have been spoiled or revealed so far, but I'm a big fan of any of these cards that are situational with how they control the board. So like the fact that this one is Sentinel while you have Initiative means that you have to make that decision of, if my opponent still has resources and actions left, I can pass my turn early to guarantee I get Initiative and thus have Sentinel, but also I'm giving up any sort of tempo or response or advantage if my opponent continues to develop, and then I might be in a pickle when the next turn starts. Or I can, push and push and push, and then I might lose out on getting the Initiative token, right? So I love this card. Big fan of the character, obviously, in Rogue One. Huge fan of the design of this. And really surprised it was just single aspect, too, just Vigilance.
It's a great card. 2/5 stat line, 4 cost, so. But ultimately, the Grit part with a 5 body makes it a lot more formidable. And like you mentioned, I love cards that play with other dynamics of the game, with other elements of the game. And the Initiative token is going to be so important. And I love it because you can do something along the lines of like, play your turns. And as soon as something happens, you might be like, all right, we're shutting the door. And I'm just going to grab the Initiative. And suddenly he's a Sentinel. And now things change. And now you have to get through him before you get to me. And that's a part of Baze Malbus that I'm pretty hyped for. And single aspect, again, I'm beginning to believe that the best decks are going to be double aspect decks. It's going to be heroism, double vigilance, heroism, double command, or villainy, double cunning, or something like that. I think that that's where it's going, or at least an equal part are going to be tri-aspect and dual aspect. That's where I'm at with that.
I'm glad you mentioned shutting the door, because the way that this reads, and, with the way I interpret the rules right now, you can have scenarios where if your opponent at the start of the turn had the Initiative token and then you play Baze, and then if they take an action and then you pass your turn to take the Initiative token, I believe that turns Sentinel on right away, because when you take the Initiative, you literally take the token. Now, granted, you're done taking actions for the turn, but like you can kind of, as you said, shut the door on somebody after you deploy him, which I think is really neat.
Next up is going to be a 2-drop Vigilance ground unit called Guardian of the Wills. So we're talking Smith, Forte, Will, I am. I'm trying to think of other wills. Either way. Yeah, you got to help me out here. Don't leave me to dry. I have to dry out this.
Oh, sorry. Once you got to Will I Am, I was out.
We're done.
Also, I got to be honest. I don't know why, but I was immediately thinking of like wills that you don't want to mention, or like I was the third or fourth down my line was Wilkes Booth, and I was like, well, no, that doesn't work. But
it is a 2/2 Force Fringe ground unit. The first upgrade you play on this unit each round costs 1 less. So a little bit of Voltron-esque type things. You just keep stacking it up and stacking it up. It's not intimidating as a 2/2 for 2, but as a 2/2 with a free upgrade on it, and every turn you just beef it up and beef it up. I feel like, remember, last week, we were talking about how I felt like Vigilance was going to be all about these big beefed up heroes. Like, it's not about getting the work done by multiple different ways. It's just one beefed up or two beefed up characters that are going to carry the majority of the load. This might be a sort of a lower tier thing where as you're building up to that 6 or 7 or 8 drop that you want to build up, this you can start dropping a bunch of stuff on it. I don't know if that's going to be a playable archetype, but that seems like the baseline.
Well, what immediately jumped out to me with this card is the fact that it doesn't say minimum of 1. Because at first I was like, well, it's only the first upgrade you play and it has to target this unit. So I was very underwhelmed. And granted, it is a single aspect common, so it's perhaps not meant to be the most overwhelming unit. But then I started thinking about situations where, because it's a 2-drop, you can play it turn 1, right? Because you start with 2 resources. So if you're talking about a turn 1 play where you can play this and then follow it up with something like Resilient, a 2/5 on turn 1 feels really good, right? Because you got that free upgrade essentially, and now you're going into the next turn with a ball of stats. Or maybe you drop it into the 2/2 and you play Protector because it's already in Vigilance, so you can play the double aspect stuff. You can play Protector and go into that first turn with a 3/3 Sentinel, right? And then on the next turn also continue to jam more upgrades on it. So it doesn't seem like that big of a deal right now, but this is a card that, as we get more sets and perhaps as upgrades become a more dedicated card in decks, or even more dedicated to archetypes, if you will, it could end up being really, really cool down the line. But I do see the potential power. Like I said, a turn 1 2/5 is very enticing.
If you have the pieces.
Yeah, if you have the pieces. That's the hard part, right?
Speaking of pieces.
Well, this guy's got lots of pieces that he's going to be putting in your hand.
Yes.
The next card that was revealed was General Krell. This is a 5-cost ground unit, double command for the aspects, 5/4 stat line, Force, Jedi, and Republic. And the text says, each other friendly unit gains when defeated, you may draw a card.
Okay. This card
this is your swarm powerhouse.
Yeah, this card is great. This card is very good. The stat line leaves a little bit to be desired, but it definitely trades. It is one of those cards that, like you mentioned, will operate best when it's in conjunction with some weenies that you play this, you attack with other things, you reap the benefits, and all that jazz. But ultimately, it's like organic Grievous, forearms and lightsabers and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's a great card, and I think that everybody hates this guy and in the show, and you're probably gonna hate him in this game too.
Yeah, I will say, you talked about the stats. The 4 health is potentially concerning, but one of the other bits that jumps out to me is that he has a lot of very relevant tags as well. So again, as we get more sets, we get more support. The fact that he's a Force and a Jedi and a Republic unit, I think that's going to end up mattering a ton in the future as well. The Republic part, because, as we start hitting, prequels and Clone Wars stuff, there's probably going to be a bunch of Republic troopers. There might be like a Republic trooper swarm deck. Obviously, Force and Jedi means that you can run lightsabers and whatever you want on him. Like, he's got a lot of upside.
Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I'll let you do it, but I'll just give the teaser, the preface that this is one of my favorite cards that has been revealed just from a design standpoint. It's so cool.
Yeah, I agree. It is a 4-cost space unit, Cunning. It is strafing gunship. You have heard me in early episodes talk about how I would love for a ground support aerial unit to do some sort of cross lane shenanigans, and here it is. I thought it was going to be a Z95 Headhunter, like Tala Squadron or something like that, to be more thematic, but this is possibly the opener that we're going to see for future cards down the line that will have similar nonsense like this, which is basically it's a 3/4 underworld vehicle fighter, a space unit. This unit can attack units in the ground area. While this unit is attacking a ground unit, the defender gets -2/-0. You are trading so efficiently with this against all the weenies that come out and the mid-range stuff. This thing is so freaking good. So freaking good. I think that this card is a must-have in cunning decks because a 3/4 for 4 is so-so. The 4 body feels good. I think that this card is just going to be a terror for certain decks. It might be a sideboard card, but ultimately the Strafing Gunship is not only a good card, it is good design. It is flavorful design. It is what I want to see out of this card game, and it's what makes me think that the people designing this game have the right idea.
Yeah, that's why it's one of my favorite cards thematically, because the design is absolutely on point. I love that it's cunning because the thing that it does is cunning, right? Like you are coming from a completely different arena to take a unit out. I love that it's an air unit that can attack ground units. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast and how we kind of wanted to see some of this cross arena interaction. I also like it because as the game progresses, again, we're just on the cusp of set 1, but when we get sets 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, we're deep into, year 2 of the game. You're going to see a lot of different stuff pop up. You're obviously going to see Rebel decks and Jedi decks and all of those things, but you're also going to see kind of other weird niche takes on deck building. Like you might just want to be like, I only want to build a deck with starships. I'm not going to even put ground units in it. It's just starships and then like events to deal with the ground. And if you want to do something like that and be thematic, you want to be like the leader of a fleet. Well, this card helps you with some of those theme deck building elements as well. And I think that's something that there are at times other card games that kind of fail to grasp, that sometimes throwing in cards for theme deck building is really important, because you get weirdos like me that want to just like go on their own adventure and build a deck with only spaceships, for example. And I adore this card.
It's a great looking card. It's a great card. All right, bring us to the next one, which I think is going to be an absolute house.
Yeah, the next card has fantastic art, speaking of spaceships, but it is an event. It is a 1-cost event. Has command and heroism for the aspects. And it says, attack with a rebel unit. It gets +1/+0 for this attack. Then attack with another rebel unit. It gets +1/+0 for this attack. This is, I think, going to be mandatory in your Hera decks because all your Spectre units are also rebels, and it's already in her aspect setup. But in a Swarm deck, in a Princess Leia deck, as we talk about some of the common leaders, this card is a very big deal. But this also has a lot of finisher potential because it's 2 different attacks. If you get to the nitty gritty where you and your opponent are at low health and your opponent is saying, all right, mentally, if I take this action and then he does this and then I can win on the backswing, like we're good. So they do that. And then you're like, oh, by the way, I attacked twice with 2 different units. You just snatch, victory away from your opponent. I love this card. This is very well done.
It costs 1.
It
costs 1. You have to play around 1 resource, which is unreal because, again, we have basically over time had talked about how these rebel decks, these trooper decks with Leia as the leader are going to be a lot of weenies that get a lot of experience, shield tokens, upgrades, etc., help from commanders and tribal leaders. But ultimately, this is the card that it needed because you can go attack with a little weenie doofus that trades upwards or busts a shield or does something crazy. And you attack with the second part of the text with Leia, who then allows for a 3rd unit to attack. So now you're chaining together all kinds of nonsense. And like you mentioned, if your opponent's playing around 1 attack but not 3, well, you're SOL, because this can be really difficult to deal with, because especially if your opponent is kind of like slow playing it and playing these low cost things, and suddenly there's like one resource left and you think you got a free pass, and then Rebel Assault comes in as an uncommon to just go ahead and blow you up this way. That's tough. That is absolutely tough. And what I really am hoping that this game will eventually, or will design around, is Hearthstone came out with a brand new mini expansion this past week. One of the cards it came out with was like, give one of your units like Wind Fury, Divine Shield, Rush, and it was like, everybody's like, oh great, I can't wait to lose to this on turn 4, because we were losing to Paladins on turn 5, so now this just sort of makes it turn 4 with this card. And that's kind of what I worry about. I don't want to see a situation where it's just a whole bunch of swarm, and if you can't clear the board consistently, one unit can get a massive push of an upgrade or something like Rebel Assault to just drive it home. I think that this is the right amount of chaining stuff together, because again, we see Rebel into Leia into other Rebel. That's a nasty little combination. And for one resource charmer, how the hell do you play around that?
I mean, I think that you have to pay attention to the aspects. So this is the other reason that I'm a big fan of this card, right? Because normally you would say, all right, if I'm playing against a Command Heroism deck and they got a bunch of weenies, I just have to keep it in the back of my mind. Clearly, they're probably running this. But this is definitely something where, you know, if I'm playing an aggressive heroism deck that's not command, like maybe I'm double aggression heroism, this might still be worth paying 3 for.
Oh, yeah.
To catch your opponent off guard.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you can attack with like Sabine and something else, then, you know, they might be taking so much. So like imagine it's Sabine and a partisan insurgent, right? Which is another rebel. That's the one where when you control another aggression unit, it gets raid 2, right? It's the 1/4, right? So you could be sitting on a board where it's like, oh, it's just Sabine and a partisan insurgent, and then all of the sudden I spend 3 resources because I'm playing something out of aspect, but my opponent takes 8. Like that's a big burst, just kind of out of left field to be stuck planning around. So this card is scary.
It's very scary. It's very scary, but not quite as annoying, let's say, as the next one, Charmer, which is a trick. So Jabba getting a little grubby mitts on another trick, which is a 7-cost Villainy Cunning event. I had no choice, Charmer, is what Lando wants to say. You always had a choice, Lando Calrissian, you scumbag. Choose up to 2 non-leader units. An opponent chooses one of those units. Return that unit to the opponent's hand, the other at the bottom of the opponent's deck. So it's a 2-for-1 removal piece for 7 or 6 if you're playing Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
Look, we'll let you all just basically digest this. This is a brutality of a card.
So this card is very, very good for a couple of reasons, but it's also situational. I really love the design of this. What I like about this card is that it pays off the more behind you are in many ways, because you get more value the more expensive the units are that you get to pick. Because they're going to be able to bounce 1, and if you pick like a 1-drop in something else, then they might just bounce the 1-drop to replay it, or who knows? Maybe they'll keep the more expensive one to replay it and send the 1-drop away. But the point is either of those scenarios, they're not too far behind on tempo. But if you get like 2 5-drops, for example, then you, one way or the other, are putting them way behind. The other reason this card is really, really brutal, and the reason I enjoy it, is because there's a lot of cards that say like when defeated, and neither of these are when defeated. So you get around some of those like on death triggers, because going back to your hand is not defeated, and putting you on the bottom is not defeated. So this is also an answer to a number of, you know, bad situations where you don't want to deal with the when defeated. You know, I'm thinking about General Krell that we just talked about, or, you know, you go back to like the Obi-Wans or the Yodas that have pretty good undefeated effects as well.
And not only that, but like this is a situation where there could be a potential where one of the cards that you want to bounce back, it might be big, but it might have a significant on-play effect. For example, like the Reinforcement Walker. Like you could bounce a Reinforcement Walker. It's a big card. And they might say, all right, I'm going to put this back in hand and put this other thing away because I want to replay the Reinforcement Walker and heal 3 damage or draw a card or do some stuff, right? Like there's like all kinds of options here for that. I still think it's going to be unreasonably annoying to deal with but that is cunning. That is just going to be cunning. Cunning is blue and magic. That's all it is. It is going to bother the hell out of you. You're going to hate playing against it. And if you are a cunning player, you're going to think that you're the bee's knees, the cat's ass, I think is the saying. Is that what it is?
No.
No, it's not the cat's ass?
No.
I think I've heard that before.
I question your choices of companions.
Well, listen up. Listen up. If any of you Wampas out there have ever heard the term the cat's ass, that please let us know in the chat.
For sure now. We're going to have people walking up and be like, hey, man, I think Ice Cave Radio is the cat's ass. And I'm going to have to hear that now. Every event we go to.
Yes. I Had No Choice on 2 gigantic things. And I think that card's the cat's ass. I swear, Charmer, I have heard this somewhere. I don't know where.
Was this something that was like a fever dream while
Possibly,
you were at a club?
But dude, that's most of what I say. If you've ever heard me casting, which you have because we've worked together many times, I say some dumb stuff. I am certain I have heard the term, and I'm not going to Google it because I want other people to figure it out for me.
All right. Emergency pack.
Yeah. I have emergency packs. They just don't happen to be for this game. I have I was doing my pack of the month club for my Instant Speed podcast Patreon. So I have some spare loose packs, but they're not Star Wars, so we don't open them on this stream. All right.
Well, I was saying it because here in the near future, we're going to actually have emergency packs.
Well,
and
can
this
I ask?
is a good transition.
Yes, it is a great transition because we are honored and delighted and privileged to be invited, myself, Charmer, and Doa, amidst a myriad of other incredible creators and people, to celebrate the launch of the game in Minneapolis on February 10th. We're going to have a wonderful time getting to know everybody. And we are going to be broadcasting, not us, but FFG is going to be broadcasting a bunch of drafts, sealed experiences, interviews, chats, things like that, and bringing to you the game and hopefully some big pulls, some exciting moments. But I'm asking you, Charmer, if they're like, hey, as a parting gift, here's a box, will you have the fortitude to not open it and have some emergency packs? That is the question, Charmer.
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See? Because, I mean, look.
I would like to say yes, no problem. But it might depend because you and I both know that I have a really severe gambling
problem.
Addiction.
Yeah.
And so if we do a sealed or whatever and I don't open anything super cool, like I don't open a Sabine or something, I might be on the hunt, like we're opening until we find a Sabine. But I would like to think that I will keep, and we don't even know if that's going to be the case, but I would like to think that if we were gifted anything, that I would be able to save it for emergency packs.
Yeah, or like, we can just record. We might be able to so look, that happens on February 10th. Then we have 2 or 3 weeks worth of episodes before the launch. So maybe we just have to save like 4 packs, right? So you could open it all. You could just we could have we could record our openings. That's the cat's ass.
No, see, that is taking the assumption that we will only get off the rails once per episode.
Yeah, you're right.
You have not yet reserved to the fact that it might be 2 or 3 times per episode we have to have emergency packs.
We need to have an emergency to the emergency pack. Like I feel like the emergency pack button should be limited to 2 because at the same time, I can't go broke because I can't keep myself on the rails, right?
Well, no, right. Like you have a parachute and an emergency chute. So
yes,
that tracks.
That's
and then
fair.
After that, we're just splat on the concrete, I guess.
Perfect. So how about this? We just have we parse it out, and we like, okay, we have 4 episodes before the official launch or before we can get our hands on product. So let's get 2 packs per, put them in the back pocket, save them for the emergency pack situation, which we're going to need. There we go. All right. Also,
that is obviously, again, assuming that we get anything. What we do know is that we will be able to play, as you said, right? They've told us that there's going to be, sealed and draft and things like that. And we will be live on stream. We're also, I know, as part of this, going to have access to some of the devs for interviews and things. So I will be, bringing some recording equipment. This will also be, at least since, we started the show, the first time that the 3 of us will be in the same place, because our schedules are chaos and we haven't actually done that yet. So we are for sure, I don't know what yet, but it would be a crime if we don't film something that's, you and me and Eric all in person. So
I've got my equipment as well. I invested in a laptop that can handle this stuff. Like that was part of it. So yeah, we'll definitely be able to bring you a lot of that stuff. And on this whole topic of the celebrational, I call it the celebrational, this celebration of the launch of the game, this community, coming together and such. I do want to say that I was lucky enough to come from the Flesh and Blood celebrational event a week in a little over a week in New Zealand to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the game. What this does, I cannot overstate how important it is for the community to coalesce, because I have been part of other card game communities where schisms occur and it becomes a competitive element within the game itself, which it's so greasy, it's so unfortunate. But from everything I've seen of this community, from every interaction, it is just support. Rising tide raises all ships. Be it SWODB, be it the Spice Squadron, and Garbage Rollers, and everybody else who is out there, Saga, and all the other podcasts, all the other entities that support this game. I get asked this a lot over my journey, and maybe it's happened to you as well, when it comes to like, oh, what do you think of like this podcast or this podcast? I'm like, we're all friends. Like, at least from my perspective, we're all friends. And it's funny because a lot of the people who come on my other podcasts have their own podcasts. And it's not like a competition. It's like we're all there pulling in the same direction. We all want the same thing. We want this game to succeed, because the game's success also means our own success. And it also means that we get to enjoy something that we love for a longer period of time. This celebration of the game, this launch party, is so cool because you and I and Doa, we knew about it for a little while now, and we got to talk to some of the people who also were invited. And it was all just like, when are you flying in? We should go grab a beer. We should go grab a coffee. Let's go jam some games. I'll print out some cards. Let's do this. Let's do that. From the get-go, Charmer, it was all about...
Yeah, it was literally like, how do we land and play in the lobby with like printed off cards before we even get our fingers on stuff, right? And also just other stuff that pops up. Like you said, right? Everybody is kind of friends, and there is a professional respect there as well. So it could be anything from like, hey, I don't have recording equipment. What do you recommend if I wanted to get some to bring for this trip? That sort of thing. Yeah, there was a lot of discourse and just overall excitement. I can't begin to express how shocked I was when I very first got the email that was mentioning this to us, just because it is very rare. Now, I've covered a lot of card games in my time. It is very rare that they do something like this before a launch. This is usually something you do like as a 1-year celebration of your game or whatever. And the fact that FFG Fantasy Flight Games is doing this, ahead of it to, recognize the people that are already, kind of sharing their love and their excitement for the game is kind of a really big deal. There's just not a lot of that where it's like, hey, before the game launches, we're gonna bring a bunch of people out and whatever. So,
well, the Flesh and Blood Celebrational, there was a lot of people from all over the world that got to meet up. People that you kind of have these odd relationships through tweets and likes, and the fact that, hey, we both like the same thing and we both are aware of each other, but you never really get to interact, and you finally do because you're in the same foreign city together, experiencing the same thing that you, and then, but the problem is like, after you dig past the surface of, hey, we both like this card game, that's when you get into, do I like you? What are you about? And I was blessed to say that everybody at that Celebrational in New Zealand were phenomenal people, and you wanted to talk to them. And I get that vibe with this community. And what's interesting also is that I'm not naive to think that that this community is immune to any type of toxicity or that kind of stuff. But I am so confident in this community that if there are those types of people or groups or such that might bubble up, that this is a community that will kind of self-police to the degree of like, hey, that we don't do that here. Like this isn't a competition. It's we're all in this together, and that's the vibe I'm getting. And I really hope that continues, because I have been in both pools. One that was peed in repeatedly by awful people, and the other one where we're all just, having laughs and know that we're all there for the same reason, and that's what I want to be around.
Well, I have bad news for you.
If this is a pee joke.
No. I was just going to say this is Star Wars, baby. So,
well,
at some point we're going to have a difference of opinion because of Star Wars, and it'll be about, our love of this wonderful, wonderful world and universe that we like to throw ourselves into. And there will be fights, probably between even you and I. And you know what's going to happen, don't you?
And
lightsaber fight in the parking lot.
Oh, that's how we settle everything.
That's how we settle it. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just going to be, we're going to have a duel at dawn with our lightsabers, and then we'll go back to being friends. But that's how we're settling it.
Can it be after lunch? I don't want to wake up at dawn to fight you in a parking lot.
No, man, I don't want to fight after I've eaten. If I got a full stomach, I'm going to be
10:30 a.m. fight in the parking lot.
Yeah.
After
and
my coffee.
We go get brunch.
Yeah, then we get brunch. And see?
All right.
And everybody's invited. Okay? That's the fact. And for the record, if you see us, any of us Wampa idiots anywhere, come say hi. We want to meet you. We want to talk to you.
We love that. We think that's the cat's ass.
It's a saying. I swear it's a saying. Okay.
Well, it is now.
On that note, Charmer. Bring us into the question period.
Hey.
Yeah.
If somebody approaches you at an event and they're holding a lightsaber and they say, I would like to duel you in the parking lot, and as you look up from their lightsaber to their face, you see it's Samuel L. Jackson. What do you say to that?
I'd be like, oh, you were the cat's ass in in Pulp Fiction, man. But also knowing just how absolutely devastating he is with a lightsaber, I would say, I have a very bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
Quiet.
All right, so we have a wonderful question this week in our Bad Feeling mailbag. This comes from Larry H. Larry, we love your questions when you send them in.
Friend of the show.
Yep. Thanks, as always. Says, hello, fellow ice cave dwelling hosts. Sorry for the double question this week and two different methods of contact. Well, we're only doing the one this week because we're trying to save some for when Doa gets back. He's got to catch up on his homework. But I really liked this one, so we're going with this one.
Sure.
Here's the question. When Finn gets a leader or a unit card, do you think it could have the Force tag? I know a story wasn't explored as much as maybe we wanted, but I thought I'd spark the discussion. Obviously, because he very famously has the lightsaber, and a lot of people thought that's where it was going to go. Follow up to this, he also says, which aspect would he be, and what do you think he would do with Force or without a Force tag?
Holy crap. Oh, Larry, you bastard.
See, I thought this was a good question.
This is an incredible question. Yes, he has the Force tag, and that's me being selfish, and this has actually been popping up a lot more in social media, the fact that, there's that meme of like the two biceps, and in the middle it's like, and one of them says people who hate the sequel trilogy, people who love the sequel trilogy, and in the middle it's people who think that Finn got a raw deal. And I tend to agree, because I thought I enjoyed The Force Awakens for all things that may have been a little bit questionable, and like a whole planet turning into a weapon is, I'll bite. What really got me into it was the Kylo Ren Vader arc of living up to Vader's, image and the obsession there, and Finn basically just going from stormtrooper to Jedi. The message there to me was, doesn't matter who you are. There's greatness in everybody if you take a stand. And then I wanted him to maybe not be a Jedi by the end of the sequel trilogy, but maybe start Jedi training at the end of it. Because he had the lightsaber, he was, there was so much going there, and I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. I'm giving him a yes. And part of it is because they kind of dug into the it doesn't matter who you are part when you see at the end of TLJ when that slave boy goes and yoinks the broom with the Force. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't matter who you are. And they talk about that because it's like, they even went down that route with Rey of, no, your parents were junk traders and they left you, and now you're a Jedi, or you're training. Like, there was so many.
There was a lot of foundational stuff in Force Awakens. Yeah, I'm with you. I overall enjoyed it. Like you, I probably have some things that I would nitpick here or there, but I still stand by. I'm with you. One, I think when you just look at Force Awakens, I think Finn was the most interesting character by far, because we had never really seen, at least on that level, on that scale, the side of the stormtrooper. They'd never been humanized, right? Like, yes, they're people and they're in the armor, but they have never been like, oh, there's people on the inside of that, right? I think that, if I'm being entirely honest, Finn and like the acceptance of him as a character is one of the reasons why we got the show that we got in Andor, where you start to explore what it's like to be on both sides, right? Because Andor does a great job with the rebellion, but also has been showing us the inner workings of what it's like to be within the Empire. I think Finn's arc was drastically underdeveloped. It was so interesting. And I still think that the opening to that movie is outstanding. Like, when they come down and you have Finn having the panic attack and Kylo stopping the bolt with Poe, and everything about that like sucked me in. Like, that was a great opener. So I say that Finn, the leader card, does not have the Force tag, but Finn, the legendary ground unit, does have the Force tag, and that's going to be art with him holding the lightsaber or whatever.
I like that.
And I think that Finn, the leader unit, is heroism and cunning. And I think it's cunning because I don't really think he's vigilant. Like, he spends a lot of that first movie trying to actually run away from his responsibility, but he's a survivor. So I think he fits well into the cunning, and he's definitely not aggression. Don't think he's really command. So I think he's heroism, cunning on his leader card. Probably does something like saving your ground units or bouncing them back to your hand, and then maybe you replay them a little bit cheaper, so that he does something cool thematically with the idea of running away, right? Like, you live to fight another day because you run away, sort of thing. I think that fits Finn from that first film pretty well. And then the Force version, I don't know. I think there's a couple of different ways you could go there, because I think you might have like ambush, because he kind of catches you by surprise. You're like, oh, dude's got a lightsaber. Didn't see that coming. Yeah, that's my initial thoughts. Obviously, I'd flesh it out and whatever, but
I like it. No notes. No notes. I'm not going to add any notes to that. I'm going to take a look quickly here to see, do we have any other submissions? I think we do.
Well, I know we have at least another one from Larry.
Oh, yeah. Hit it.
I think the other one was from Twitter, if I remember right.
Make it happen. What do we got from Larry?
Well, I didn't have it pulled up. I just remember seeing it.
Well,
I only had.
Let me have a look here, because I did put something out. Let me see. Do we have any questions? Jedi Geek Girl says, Wampas, are you guys saying that you guys are hairy, like cold, eats raw meat, and are aggressive individuals?
Yes.
Well, yeah, maybe. Oh, here's one. NTQ asks, I've commissioned the three of you to each make one card that has not been revealed yet, including character, so you can't make Krell. All right. What would that card be, and what would it do, and the aspect cost? So you just created Finn, which is great. I will say, I'm going to create the dude that has like the crowd control baton. They
Traitor.
Like, yeah, they canonically, I forgot his trooper tag, but they call him TR8, like R, like traitor. I will say that I'm going to create that character. It's a trooper, and basically it says it gets plus 1/+1, or it's like I'll say it's a 3-drop 3/3 that gets +1/+2 when it's fighting something of the same aspect as it.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to do that. Just popped in my head. Like, it obviously needs some work. I would say it's villainy. Maybe it's like if it's attacking something with heroism, or it's attacking something with the same aspect, like it has villainy as well, or it gets +1/+1 for every aspect it shares with whoever it's attacking. Because they were on the same side, but now they're not.
And it's so hard because, like, if you're just talking about any character that doesn't have a card yet, there's so many that I am like dying to see in future sets that it's almost hard to pick one. Like, yeah, Maz Kanata is a great one, but I mean, even just think of like, we don't have Ahsoka or Asajj Ventress or, Queen Amidala yet, or General Grievous, right? There's all of that Clone Wars prequel era stuff. And then from the new movies as well, like Captain Phasma is another character I'd love to see have a card.
We're going to dig deep here. I want to go to some episode 1 stuff, like Captain Panaka and Rick Ollier. Watto for sure, but I'm talking about a trooper captain and a ace pilot. Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Did we get a wedge? We did get a wedge.
Yeah, pretty sure we got a wedge. Yeah.
Well, we didn't get like a hobby. We didn't get a Wes Jansen.
I mean, just for the sake of Doa, I know he's not here, but I can channel him. Like, we need all the pod racing stuff. Like, we need a Sebulba.
Yeah.
Well,
we need like a whole. I wonder if there's ever going to be add-ons, like how Star Wars CCG like added an entire new mechanic of pod racing, which just changed the whole game. I don't know if they're going to be that ambitious, but
I mean, we've got Boba Fett, and I'm sure we'll get Mandalorian at some point. But Jango Fett, he deserves his flowers.
Definitely. I mean, there's tons.
Again, talking like there's no Kylo Ren or Rey or all of the like main stuff from
And this is why I'm also very just.
Darth Maul doesn't even have a card,
dude. There's plenty that don't have cards, and I'm very okay with this because, and this is another reason why I'm very confident in this game, is that the source material is so vast that it's not like, oh well, we're just gonna print another Luke.
If I had to pick one though. Okay. Like, let's say you only get one. You win some cool invitational. You get to design a unit. All right. If I had to pick one, it's not technically one character. It is multiple, but it's going to be one ground unit, and it is the Max Rebo band. Because we need the Jats in the universe, man.
What about Figure and Dan? We should have like a battle of the bands. Figure and Dan versus Max Rebo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in. All right. That does it. Let's close the mailbag there, Charmer. As we say thank you again to everybody who's listening to Ice Cave Radio and welcoming all the new potential faces that might be joining us. We do want to remind you the best way you can support us is just dropping a 5-star review, subscribing to it. All that stuff is free, and it goes miles for us. It feeds the algorithm monster, and they are happy, and they do good things for us. So thank you for those who already have, and those who want to help us, go ahead and hit subscribe and give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to this. We have received some inquiries about things like shirts, playmats, etc. Part of the rebrand is so that we can do these things. So the wheels are turning on that. And as such, we are also considering doing a Patreon, but we do not want to do a Patreon if it wasn't value to you as well. So once that gets going, we also will get going. But ultimately, your support means the world to us, so thank you, as always, for that. All right, if you want to email us, you can do so at icecaveradio@gmail.com, at icecaveradio on Twitter. I am at WatchFlake. That is at thatcharm3r, and somewhere out there is a Force Ghost called Doa, at GGDOA. Glad to have you. See you soon. Charmer, wisdom, now.
May the Force be with you.